Chapter 3: Students, the Law, and Public Schools. School officials are granted broad powers to establish rules and regulations governing student conduct in the school setting. These powers, however, are not absolute. They are subject to the standard of reasonableness. Generally, rules are deemed to be reasonable if they are necessary to maintain an orderly and peaceful school environment and advance the educational process. Since students enjoy many of the same constitutional rights as adults, courts have been very diligent in ensuring that their constitutional rights be protected. In the landmark Tinker case, the U.S. Supreme Court for the first time held that students possess the same constitutional rights as adults and that these rights do not end at the schoolhouse door. Protests and demonstrations are considered forms of free expression. Thus, students are afforded the right to participate in these activities. As long as these activities are peaceful and do not violate school rules or result in destruction of school property, they cannot be disallowed. Courts generally hold that a school publication has the responsibility for providing a forum for students to express their ideas and views on a variety of topics of interest to the school community. While the newspaper is intended to represent a forum for student expression, those responsible for its production should be mindful of their obligation to embrace responsible rules of journalism. Broad censorship by school officials is not permitted and is in violation of the free speech rights of students. Limited review of school-sponsored publications may be permitted, but broad censorship is not. Non-school sponsored newspapers are those not endorsed by the school but printed at the student's expense away from school premises. These publications may not be totally prohibited by school officials. Restrictions, however, may be imposed regarding the time and place of distribution. Such restrictions are recognized as conditions affecting freedom of press, not prohibitions. Students who are responsible for producing the newspaper are held accountable for any libelous material printed in the newspaper. Student dress as a form of free expression is not viewed as significantly as most other forms of free expression. There is, however, a First Amendment freedom associated with it. Dress may be regulated if there is a defensible basis for doing so. However, school regulations that violate students' right by being vague, ambiguous, and failing to demonstrate a connection to disruption will not meet court scrutiny. Slogans worn on t-shirts, caps, and other media that are in direct conflict with the school's stated mission may be regulated. Those expressions which violate standards of common decency, contain vulgar, lewd, and otherwise obscene gestures also may be regulated. School suspension still is considered a legal form of discipline for students who violate school or district policy. In-school suspensions used by 91% of the school districts in the United States, whereas out-of-school suspensions are used by 95% of the districts. There are two types of due process, both of which apply in the school setting: procedural and substantive. Procedural due process means that if a person is deprived of life, liberty, or property, a prescribed constitutional procedure must be followed. Substantive due process ensures that a valid reason exists if a person is deprived of life, liberty, or property, and that the means used to deprive the person are reasonable. Unlike suspension, expulsion is considered one of the most severe forms of discipline because it involves long-term separation from the school district and, in some instances, permanent separation. Searches may be conducted by school personnel if reasonable Searches may be conducted by school personnel if reasonable suspicion is established. Reasonable suspicion is based on information received from students or teachers that is considered reliable by school officials. There should be a sense of urgency based on a belief that the student has in his or her possession some dangerous item that could pose a serious threat to the health and safety of the students or others in the school. When law enforcement officials enter the school to conduct a search, the search must be preceded by a warrant. If a warrant is issued, strong evidence involving probable cause should be established. The use of metal detectors, like other intrusive methods, must be justified as reasonable and necessary to meet a legitimate school objective. In this case, maintaining a safe and orderly school environment was considered a legitimate school objective. Corporal punishment usually involves the use of physical contact for disciplinary purposes. Corporal punishment as a disciplinary tool is not uncommon within school systems in the United States. Classroom harassment is a form of sexual discrimination based on the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in Davis versus Monroe Company Board of Education. School officials are liable if they are clearly unreasonable and deliberately indifferent toward the alleged harassing conduct. The courts have generally held that pregnant and married students may not be denied the opportunity to attend school. The basis for the court's position is that these students must be afforded equal protection under the law as well as due process of law. Married students have the right to attend public schools. Any rules designed to exclude married students from attending school are invalid and in violation of their 14th Amendment rights, namely equal protection under the law.